Welcome to the Carousel of Happiness Podcast. I'm your host, Allie Wagner. On our last episode, I shared a new intention for the podcast. Rather than looking backward on where the carousel has been, I'd like to shift our attention to where it is now and how it is currently impacting others. So we're going to start exploring the ripple effects of this very special place. Today's episode is about carousel operator, admin, and painter Rebecca Linn, who's been offering a different kind of service at the carousel for the last year now. One that has its origins in the Bronx in the 1970s. You'll hear about how Rebecca's life took a bit of a turn and how that turn has influenced her showing up twice a week for others. We'll talk about the complexities of the human body as well as the complexities of the human experience. Let us begin with today's story. When you visit the Carousel of Happiness on Friday afternoons between 12 and 1, you'll notice a little handwritten sign at the bottom of the stairs that reads, "Puppet Theater Closed." But if you ignore the sign, like I did last Friday, and walk up the stairs anyway, you'll pad across the thick carpet, past the carousel overlook and the actual puppet theater itself, and into the birthday party room. In it, you'll find plastic chairs lining the walls, forming a little half circle in the room. And there's a big, long table in there, covered last week in a turquoise tablecloth from the birthday party a couple of days before. But instead of there being sheet cake and paper plates laid out on that table, you'll instead find newspaper clippings, several laminated pictures of the human ear, a bottle of hand sanitizer, and carefully packaged acupuncture needles. And standing next to the table, if you show up Fridays between 12 and 1 like I did last week, you'll find, in a carousel sweatshirt and jeans, with an apron cinched around her waist, painter, carousel operator, and admin Rebecca Linn, ready to greet you with a smile. Because on Friday afternoons between 12 and 1 and Monday evenings between 5 and 6, the Carousel of Happiness hosts a different kind of party in the birthday room. During those times, you'll find Rebecca at the carousel not handing out party favors or putting up birthday streamers. And those needles, by the way, on the table are not for pinning the tail on the donkey. Twice a week, Rebecca offers a gift no store can sell, a gift you don't even have to buy. The gift of peace, the gift of clarity, the gift of coming home to yourself. Twice a week, instead of painting the animals like she does during the week or spinning you round and round as the operator on weekends, Rebecca instead shows up to the carousel to offer a different type of service. A form of community-based acupuncture clinically proven to reduce anxiety, depression, insomnia, as well as reduce withdrawal symptoms and cravings for alcohol, drugs, and other substances. This type of completely free, accessible to all, community-based acupuncture is so powerful it has been proven to be 5 times more effective than methadone in treating heroin addiction. Rebecca has been offering this service at the Carousel of Happiness for about a year now, but I went for the first time with my husband Garth last week. When we arrived, we were the first ones there. We scanned a QR code and filled out some paperwork. I took a quick peek at the news clippings Rebecca had laid out on the table. I picked up a front page article from the Daily Camera from January 16th about AcuDetox or AcuWellness, the type of acupuncture we were about to receive. The article profiled Rebecca's teacher, Avani Dilger, an addiction counselor and acupuncture detox specialist who started offering this type of community-based acupuncture in Boulder County after the King Soopers mass shooting in 2021. AcuDetox or AcuWellness is a 5-point ear acupuncture protocol in which 5 small needles are placed in each ear, where they remain for between 20 to 40 minutes. The 5 spots on the ear where the needles are placed come from Chinese medicine and are designed to increase energy flow in areas of the body and serve different purposes for the body. After Garth and I filled out our paperwork, Rebecca invited us to sit down, and with firm yet gentle hands, she put 5 needles in each of our ears. Now, for a moment, I want to direct your attention to the fact that when I introduced Rebecca, I did not introduce her as a doctor or a nurse. She is a retired Boulder Valley School District employee. She has a degree in fine arts. How is it that she's putting needles in my ear in the birthday party room of the Carousel? Rebecca practices something called auricular acupuncture, a fancy word for ear acupuncture. This type of acupuncture can be taught to and administered by non-medical professionals just like Rebecca. Rebecca shared with me that this type of treatment actually originates in the United States in the Bronx in the early 70s, right around the time that Scott is coming back from Vietnam, experiencing his own challenges with reentry to civilian life. During a very tumultuous time in American culture, there were others just like him on the other side of the country also struggling. At this time, heroin use had become widespread in Harlem and the South Bronx, having a particularly devastating effect on people of color. Local leaders of groups like the Puerto Rican Young Lords and the Black Panther Party were demanding addiction support for their communities, with no luck. So on November 10th, 1970, more than 24 members of the Young Lords, along with members of the Black Panther Party, occupied the 6th floor of Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx to insist that the long-promised drug treatment program come to fruition. After days of tense negotiations between the Young Lords and hospital administrators, the drug detox program was granted funding and recognition, staffed largely by volunteers. And in the hospital's auditorium, volunteers set up 40 chairs and 20 tables and began administering methadone, a synthetic opioid used to ease the symptoms of heroin withdrawal. For the clinic's opening day, over 200 people formed a line outside waiting for treatment. But staff members recognized that methadone wasn't the complete answer. They wanted an alternative treatment that was natural and inexpensive. And they knew that methadone was just another form of dependence. Right around this time, the Lincoln Hospital Detox Program hired a young activist named Mutulu Shakur as the director of political education. If his last name sounds familiar, it's because he is the stepfather of rapper and actor Tupac Shakur. In 1973, Mutulu Shakur read an article in the New York Times about doctors in Hong Kong who were using acupuncture to treat withdrawal symptoms of substance abuse. Acupuncture in communist China at that time was designed to be taken out into the rural areas, administered by people with relatively little training, and to provide comprehensive, generalized preventative care to communities who were not being served by hospitals, just like in Harlem and in the Bronx. It sounded like a perfect fit for Lincoln Hospital. After receiving training in Quebec and California, Shakur became certified in auricular acupuncture in 1976 and returned to New York to establish Lincoln's detox acupuncture training program, one of the first of its kind in the country. This program is standardized in the United States by the National Acupuncture Detoxification Association, or NADA. Now, more than 600 programs in the United States use acupuncture as a method of addiction recovery. NADA has trained more than 10,000 health professionals in North America and more than 25,000 healthcare providers in more than 40 different countries, including Rebecca Linn. Rebecca's path to acupuncture wasn't planned. Much like Scott, Rebecca found herself pivoting on her life's journey after her own dark night of the soul of sorts. 1 year ago, Rebecca's daughter Sky died of a fentanyl overdose. The overdose happened after 15 years of opioid use and misuse. Sky had been in a car accident long ago, and the doctor prescribed her opioids for the pain. In the years that followed, she would go back and forth between using opioids and rehabilitation before she passed last year. After learning more about what happens chemically in the brain to people who take opioids and mourning the loss of her daughter, Rebecca felt a strong desire to do something, to help. Rebecca's granddaughter had been seeing Avani Dilger for support, and Avani mentioned the acupuncture program. Rebecca signed up immediately, and she's been offering this service to anyone who shows up ever since. Why does she do it? What does she get out of these sessions? She says it's an honor to both her and the memory of her daughter to help others find relief. And she's telling the truth, because as soon as she put needles in Garth's ear, he began to cry. Rebecca noticed this immediately, and without thinking, she reaches for him and goes, "Oh, baby, do you need a tissue?" We all laughed. She apologized for calling him baby. But he doesn't mind. The tenderness, the love, it's just oozing out of her. She can't help it. I haven't known Rebecca very long, but I know her to be thoughtful and kind, quiet. She really thinks about what she says before she says it. She takes her time and she doesn't rush, but she's not slow. She's deliberate, intentional, discerning. And much like the rest of us who live up here, she is tough and hardy and resilient. And in that moment, when she's offering my baby a tissue, she is all of those things, as well as tender, as well as compassionate. She is so loving. It is obvious that this love is coming through her from somewhere else. She is just the messenger. Just like with Scott, you can see so clearly how she's living out a life's purpose by holding healing space for others. You can tell that she's dancing with the divine, one needle at a time. Garth explains to Rebecca that he cries every time he gets body work. This is 100% true. Acupuncture, sound healing, massage, it doesn't matter. He always cries. Garth was a wildland firefighter for 25 years and spent a lot of his life, like many first responders, shutting himself off from his feelings in order to cope, in order to survive. And now that he's retired, he uses body work as a way to somatically release what's being held inside of him and has been for decades. The more I follow my own path, the more I appreciate both the simplicity and the complexity of body work. Sure, talk therapy is great, but there is something to be said for allowing energy to be felt in our bodies and passed without analysis. There is a lightness to it, an ease. It feels more animalistic, more natural in some way. When Garth and I walk our dogs in the woods, sometimes we'll come across a moose. And thankfully, these encounters have been safe, but sometimes a little nerve-wracking. And after the moment has passed, one of our dogs, our puppy, will go nuts. He will wiggle and he'll shake and he'll vocalize and nip at his sister. Basically, he goes nuts. But in doing so, he allows the stress hormones inside his body to move their way through, and then all of a sudden, he's good. And, likely, 10 minutes later, he is asleep on the couch. But we as human beings don't do this. We don't always allow ourselves to feel the sensations inside our bodies. And when we don't feel them, they get stuck in there. Those memories, those experiences, they sit in our bodies, creating physiological imbalances like anxiety, insomnia, or digestive disorders. According to Chinese medicine, every area of the body can be traced to a single pressure point in the ear. And you can stimulate these points through acupuncture to help increase energy flow. And what's interesting about these points is that you can see the physiological impact of this area, but also you can see the emotional and spiritual impacts as well. So the type of acupuncture that Rebecca provides is a 5-point protocol. So as an example, point number 1 is the sympathetic point. And this point calms the sympathetic nervous system. It soothes the spirit. It fosters serenity. It improves self-confidence. According to Chinese medicine, stimulation of this earth point increases our empathy and helps us care for ourselves and for others with grace and compassion. Point number 2 is called the Shen Men, or the spirit gate. This improves our connection to ourselves and to others. It increases our circulation, both in terms of the physiological movement of blood, but also, as well, the heart's metaphorical ability to love. Stimulation of this area improves self-control and helps us communicate better. Activation of this fire point fosters a deeper relationship with ourselves as a bridge to deepening our relationship with others. It has been known to calm ruminating thinking, supports the processing of strong emotions, and reduces stress, depression, anxiety, and insomnia. Point number 3 is the kidney point. It calms fear in the presence of not knowing all of the answers. Stimulation of this point gives us the will, the energy, the fortitude to get through all of life's difficult challenges. This water point teaches us stillness and intentional listening and supports our access to inner knowledge and intuition. Physiologically, it improves fear management, heals internal organs, and supports the adrenal glands. Point number 4 is the conduit for the expression of free-flowing emotions. It allows for vision, creativity, hope, planning. Stimulation of this area assists us in seeing things outside the box from different angles. It allows us to change and transform as we move through life. This wood point offers us hope. Hope that we can transmute our anger and frustration and those other sticky emotions to become better people as a result. This point reawakens the promise of the potential for growth and change. And point number 5, the lung point. This point encourages us to be discerning, to keep in our experience that which is working and let the rest go. This point reminds us that if we release what no longer serves, we have more space for our highest and best. Stimulation of this fifth point helps us grieve what has come before and has passed so that we can move forward in life. Just like the breath, we are encouraged to bring in new, fresh energy and release and let go of the old. This point helps us navigate transitions and surrender to what is. And while all of this is lovely, when Garth was sitting next to me, crying during his treatment, he didn't know which of these areas were being stimulated. He couldn't tell you if his tears were because of grief or anxiety or stress. All he could tell you was that whatever it was no longer inside his physical body. Rebecca estimates that she probably sees about 14 people a week at the Carousel. Some are processing grief, others hoping to reduce stress. And she shows up twice a week to hold healing space for others, so that others might get the help that they need. And while this path might not have been the path she intended for herself, it is certainly one that her life's experience has guided her toward. I've been thinking a lot about Sky this week in preparation for this episode, thinking about the impact of her legacy. Rebecca estimates that she's given acupuncture to around 500 people since she started last year. That's 500 people who have benefited because of her and her relationship with her daughter. We are intricately connected. What happens in our ears relates to what happens in our bodies. Everything is connected. And the same is true for one another. What happens in one human being has the potential to impact others in a way that we're only just starting to understand. If you're curious about acupuncture, stop by the Carousel. Fridays, 12 to 1, and Mondays, 5 to 6. Treatment is completely free. All supplies are funded by a class action lawsuit against the pharmaceutical companies who produced the addictive opioids in the first place. This week, I invite you to give yourself permission to feel. Whatever sensations are moving through your body, I invite you to be present with them all. Because that which we resist persists. And if you can't come to the Carousel for acupuncture, go for a walk. Spend time outside. And remember, if you come across a moose on the trail, know that you can wiggle and bark and nip at your sister. Oh, wait, no, don't do that. But take some advice from my puppy. If you allow yourself to feel for just a little bit, you might be able to take a nap on the couch 10 minutes later. In the meantime, take care. Be well. And as we like to say at the Carousel of Happiness, don't delay joy. And we'll see you next time around.
Beginnings and endings are only pretendings. I'll see you next time around. I'll see you next